All right, welcome to the Open Source Data Summit. My name's Audra Montenegro, and I'm having the pleasure of moderating a panel on how user communities drive open source data projects. And today we have three awesome panelists who I'm going to introduce here shortly. But we have Neha, Pawar, Sudha, Bhavani, and Priyanka, Naik. So Priyanka, she's actually been a software engineer for almost 17 years, and she loves tackling challenging problems to design and build effective and impactful architectures and solutions. And as a data engineer, she's most interested in data privacy and security and sustainable, scalable architectures to support data pipelines and stream processing. She likes cross-pollinating time-tested architectural practices between software and data engineering. Welcome, Priyanka.
Thank you so much, Audra. Thanks for having me here.
Oh, it's awesome to have you. I can't wait to get into this conversation. And then Bhavani Sudha, she is the head of open source at Onehouse and a PMC member of the Apache Hudi project. Her interests are in building smart, fast data systems, and she comes with vast experience in real-time and distributed data systems through her work at MoverWorks, Uber, and LinkedIn's data infra teams. And she's also passionate about engaging with and driving the Hudi community. Apache Hudi is a fast-growing, diverse global community of people and organizations like ByteDance, GE Aviation, Disney, Uber, and Walmart, to name a few. Welcome, Bhavani.
Thanks, Audra. Thanks for the warm welcome.
My pleasure. All right. And then finally, Neha Pawar is a founding engineer and head of data infra at Startree, which aims to democratize data for all users by providing real-time user-facing analytics. And prior to Startree, she was a part of LinkedIn's data analytics infrastructure org for 5 years, working on Apache Pinot and Third Eye. She's passionate about big data technologies and real-time analytic databases. Neha is an Apache Pinot PMC and committer. She has made numerous impactful contributions to Apache Pinot with a focus on real-time streaming integrations, ingestion, and storage optimizations. She actively fosters the growing Apache Pinot community and loves to evangelize Pinot by making entertaining video tutorials, illustrations, and sipping on it in her spare time. Welcome, Neha.
Thank you so much. Very happy to be here.
Awesome. Well, let's get started. I'd like to start with Priyanka. She currently works at Palo Alto Networks as a software engineer, but I wanted to really get her experience on just the end user side of things and using open source projects. So how do you leverage the community, Priyanka?
When I was building the data platform, I think that was when I really became active in using and leveraging open source tools, especially data related tools like Strimzy, Kafka Connect, or any of the connectors like which run on Kafka Connect. So all of those were things where I really enjoyed like engaging with, and also like learned a lot from the community. I was mostly looking at CNCF's Slack. I think it was a very useful environment to be in. Like people were working on the same kind of problems, and they were trying to leverage many of the projects that we have, Strimzy or Kubernetes, cloud events. So all of those were really things which, I got a lot of answers from, a lot of support from the original developers of those libraries and projects, and saw the design process, everything that went on in the thought process of the design, or even like, proposals and how they were discussed and, brought into fruition. So I really enjoyed working with the data projects related to the data platform specifically, but yeah.
Nice. Thanks for that answer. I personally love watching different communities collaborate. I'm actually a core program manager at CNCF, and I love to really learn, who's getting supported by their company to contribute to these projects. Or are they doing it all in their spare time? So maybe Priyanka, you have some insight on throughout the years, like in the industry in general, what kind of resources you're seeing contributed to different open source communities?
I think it's mostly, developers really knowing that these open source projects are really robust and, scalable, and that they begin doing it just out of general curiosity and wanting to contribute more, because many people are using it and adding features to it, which they feel like will benefit people. Though there are, companies or in the industry like that I have seen, like there are teams like where it is encouraged, but then there are times when they will be like, yeah, I mean, the thing is, I think they really love the low cost opportunity of open source communities, but at the same time, we feel responsible as engineers or developers who use these open source communities to know that, we need to engage in reporting bugs if we are seeing something. That's the minimal, and or recommending any sort of features which might be useful as for developers at large. So, and for me, I think I have been lucky in that sense, where I worked with teams which really knew the potential of open source projects, and my managers would encourage, the engineering teams would encourage like using open source projects more than proprietary vendors, because many a times it's just time tested, and everybody has used it, and so there is a lot of be it MySQL or Linux related protocols. So all of those, I think people have seen the effect of open source projects over time, and I think there is a lot of encouragement at like the engineering leadership, at least levels of
Nice.
the company. Yeah.
Well, that's reassuring.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like quality assurance, whether you're encouraged to be using this open source projects, or you're the one who kind of encouraged the company to use it. And it's like, okay, let's make sure that these are sustainable. And then also, how do you go and choose a quality project? And so I'd like to kind of switch over to Sudha and Neha in terms of like their projects that they work on, Apache Hudi and Apache Pinot. These are both, over 5.5-star on GitHub projects. And it's like, how do you get there? So maybe Sudha can touch on starting with how do you vet community members,
Sure.
and then enable them with their roles after that.
Yeah, definitely. So Hudi at least has like different touch points with the community. We have like a very active, Slack community where people come in and ask all sorts of questions depending on where they are. There could be like a very like an entry stage, or like probably using Hudi, or like deeper like advanced users. Like we see like a wide variety of questions from users. Sometimes they even feel confident to ask like questions around ecosystems, or how do I integrate Hudi with this model, this is my environment, and things like that. And usually like from here the deeper questions get into GitHub, and sometimes people even feel confident to directly engage in our GitHub issues to post their questions. And further down, it all goes into Jira's. So we and beyond these avenues, we regularly host like weekly office hours where people can get in touch with PMC members on the call to do like a live triaging of their issues, and like discuss ideas and things like that. And there are other ways where people come and like present their use case, and like we host like a community sync monthly where users come and showcase their journey with Hudi in their orgs, or like their experience, or like even add more color to how they added other components to make their use case successful. So constantly engaging in all these forums kind of give people the confidence to be like more fluent with the project as they go through the process. And what we have seen happen over time is people also engage in other like threads and GitHub issues to give their perspective and share their experience with other users, and this kind of organically builds that community, because there is just not like few people involved or engaged, but more people kind of engage in these threads. And some have also gone to the extent of like taking that initiative to fix things like docs, or if they have like more vested interest in the features that the community should take up, they also volunteer to drive the implementation with our like defined process.
Nice. So you basically vet people based on their engagement that you've seen in your interactions as a PMC member. Do you have like something that's similar to a job board? For example, CNCF has Clotributor, and it just lists all the open roles in different projects. Is there something similar for people to apply for a role?
There isn't like a formal role with Apache. Like there is like contributor, committership, and PMC, and contributors can basically submit like pull requests on different aspects, like docs or even features or bug fixes and things like that. Within the community, there isn't like a formal guideline. It's more of us being creative and like engaging with the community. What we do to make it useful for the community is like we constantly keep refreshing the content in terms of docs that would be relevant to users, or like even newbie, like tag newbie jiras to say like, hey, these are things that you can start jumping on in the project. And this is something that we kind of evangelize.
Awesome. Okay, cool. What about you, Neha? Can you share processes around, problems, solutions, and updates? How does Apache Pinot navigate all that?
Yeah, certainly. So we're kind of pretty new of a community. So kind of rewind a little bit. So we didn't have like much process or not much idea on how to like rally and drive a community. So just like 4 years ago, we were just like a 50-member community, and not as many GitHub stars as you see right now. And primarily the adoptions were from like LinkedIn and Uber, where some of the core authors were. And then we were like, okay, we need to build a community. We need to set up some processes. So like, what should we do? One thing that we tried was, hey, can we be the product manager to this community and, pretend that, hey, these are our customers. So then what would we do? How would we navigate in that case? So one thing we tried was we sent out a poll of, hey, these are the features that we're thinking of building. Would you be interested? Vote for it. We shared this on like Twitter and LinkedIn. And then we got such great insights into what the community wants. And we realized that, hey, some of our lens was very different, coming from like very cushioned environments of like LinkedIn and Uber, where like we were maybe focused on some features versus the community was asking for ease of use and ease of getting started. We were like very fixated on, say, hey, Kafka and S3, but then the community wanted Kinesis, GCS, Flink, Debezium. And then also some major features like upserts in an OLAP system or storage tiering. All these were kind of pushes and insights we got from the community, because we started doing this thing of, hey, tell us what you want. Then we started having kind of revealing the roadmap meetings. We started doing show and tell meetings with contributors who said
Nice.
that they would be like participating in these things. We like literally used to have this meeting with 40-50 people, each going 1 minute, one after the other, just talking about, hey, this is what we're working on. This is the update. This is the PR. Go check it out. Talk to me in Slack. And yeah, so just really focusing on processes where we could hear the voices of the community, and just knowing that, hey, you will only be as successful as the successful adoptions in the community was what helped us.
Absolutely. Good thing you surveyed the community. It's crazy to see the differences between what we think will service folks and then what was really needed. Yeah, but you bring up a good point about, open source being like project management for an ecosystem, versus product management. It's, they have some parallels for sure.
Yeah.
At what point, for both you, Sudha and Neha, like what point would you label open source community successful? Either one of you, maybe Sudha, go first.
Yeah. The community is like self-serve to some extent, and that is a critical success. And we usually see this when like people chime in on others' threads, even though they are not like related to each other. And then people like tag often, "Hey, you mentioned about this issue some time back. Do you have insights on this? You seem to be using similar environment." And these kind of things kind of reveal that people are like engaged in the community and they feel comfortable talking with each other, and that's how it happens.
Yeah, +1 to that point of like a self-driving community. Like we reached a point where the metrics became less top of mind for us. Like earlier, every 100 new members, we used to like celebrate and watch it like a hawk. But now it's like, hey, it's an active community. The engagement is just happening. And we sometimes find out about adoption stories from blogs that we just get tagged on in LinkedIn, or when somebody asks a question, someone will just share that, hey, this was our success story for this use case. Do you want to chat? So at that point, I think we said that, okay, we have a community. It's no longer us looking at very closely at GitHub stars and the members who are joining.
Yeah, self-running. That's a good point. Yeah, Priyanka, I don't know if there's something that you wanted to add in terms of when you look at open source projects and how you decipher, we want to use this. Is it just based on experience of the software engineers, or is it based on that success we were just talking about?
I think both Neha and Sudha like really brought up important points on interoperability, right? Like you're trying to find like inputs from the community, and many people are trying to use the project within a certain ecosystem, and being able to build like a robust project which sort of caters to all of those ecosystems in question. So I feel that's actually something which I look for because that gives me more flexibility to use other services alongside the open source projects, which I try to evaluate. And also one of the things which I use, it depends upon the use case really many times, like what problems you're trying to solve and what are the solutions in that problem space, and will this project or this particular solution work for what I'm looking for, or will I have to do something in order to make it more usable? So all of those things, and do those integrations already exist? Do I have to build something? So I use all of those, basically just generally from my experience, what used to, happen, and then you begin just using a single thing for one specific solution. Versus seeing if it's more spread out, if I can like leverage use of it in multiple places for different problems that I'm trying to solve. So these are all just, they come from experience really, how I look at these things. But yeah, really like important points that both Neha and Bhavani brought up. That's awesome that you guys listen to the community and then build stories and ideas out of it. That's
Absolutely.
Really good.
Do you by chance have a use case or an example you can give us, Priyanka, on quality or flexibility when leveraging an open source project?
I think maybe I can give an example of Strimzy. So Kafka, if you see, like, Kafka is awesome. It's really like something you would want to do, but then to even manage Kafka was like many times it added a bit of overhead for people to adopt Kafka. And when Strimzy came along, it really sort of fast forwarded things. And then when I looked at the community, the developers were very on point on like fixing issues as soon as they came up, or addressing, like giving solutions. So I would suggest, like, I would say Strimzi is probably one of the things which I really enjoyed using. I have to check out Pinot and Hudi for sure after this.
Awesome. And then maybe Sudha to touch on how Apache Hudi assures the quality throughout the project.
Yeah, sure. So we have like a very defined process of our releases and, any hot fixes that needs to happen on release thing, right? Like we usually go, like every release, someone from the community volunteers to like manage the release, and that person is responsible for, gathering like the features that need to go into this release, and make sure it goes through all the testing process, all the CI and things like that. And beyond that, we have like regular engagement with these contributors who are from, like, we're actively contributing from major orgs around the world, and they also like basically volunteer with testing cycles in their orgs, at least on the features that they're working with. So we kind of have like distributed and community-driven testing process that really helps us, because people test the project on different aspects, and we make sure that every release goes in after like diligent vetting of the process, and people feel free to kind of negative vote to say like, hey, this is broken, and we go like do the hot fix before we actually release the version of that project. And this is like Apache process, right? It's nothing specific to Hudi. It's been successful so far, and there have also been cases where people kind of report like post a release, and we go with like a minor version to say like, hey, this has been a regression that is identified by the community, and we want to fix it with a minor version or release. And that's how the entire process goes through.
Awesome. And then what about Apache Pinot on the real-time analytics side of things, Neha? How do you all assure quality within the project?
Yeah, very similar to what Sudha mentioned, given it's also an Apache project. So we also have like the rigorous release process that goes through like the testing, and other committers and PMC, they like validate and vote for it. But more than that, I think what really helps is like for Pinot in particular, it's used to power like end user facing analytics in like some really big companies like LinkedIn, Uber, Stripes, DoorDash. And given it's for end user facing analytics, it's like in plain sight, it's like out there. So these companies are like really on top of it. Like the stakes are pretty high for them. So they also build internal, like really solid release processes and regression suites. Sometimes they contribute like the suites back to the project. So just having all these production usage environments, and the customer, like the companies who are using it like for some really critical use cases, them reviewing what's going in and just getting more perspectives and eyes on the project is something that really helps with the quality assurance of Pinot. Yeah,
the spirit of open source. Prior to this discussion, we talked about being able to see under the hood. I think Priyanka, I don't know if you want to elaborate on more of why you choose open source.
Just as you mentioned, like being able to see under the hood and being able to know what's happening, and that gives you a lot of assurance of like what sort of benchmarks you can set for your systems, and what SLAs you can agree to with even end users or customers, based upon like what we see. And then also being able to see under the hood is also a huge benefit in seeing what are all the blind spots, and then see what we can do to improve the system, or see what we can do to augment another solution to work with it, or fixing issues, just generally fixing issues. I feel that's actually very beneficial of being able to do that in open source projects.
Yeah, plus one on that. At least like on the Hudi side, we have seen a lot of users who present in the monthly showcases to see how they have augmented or extended the system for their needs, and whether they open source it or not, like find the bandwidth, or that's a common use case for the community or not. It's great to see such kind of creativity and things that are flowing into the project, and that kind of resonates with other users who are in the same boat, right? So at least they approach to us like, hey, can you tell us how you did this, or is there anything that you can do about sharing with the community? Even as a private repository, we can at least spend some time. So that kind of helps growing the community and when identifying these as common features that is popular in demand.
You mentioned finding the
Totally.
bandwidth. I think this is a good place to kind of finalize our panel here with 4 more minutes. Like, how do you build hunger in people, like to contribute? Where does that hunger come from, that motivation? Maybe Neha, you'd like to start?
Sure. I mean, there's some simple things that we should do, which I think Sudha mentioned early on, is just having like beginner issues, having the Slack channel for people to come and ask their questions. What we also like to do is, like, all everyone wants to do at the end of the day is to like solve some hard problem, go through the process of thinking about it, figuring out on their own, and then having like the satisfaction of putting some contribution out into the world. So having things in the pipeline which are meaty enough but still good first time issues is like something we try to do. So when we see someone's come in that showing a little bit of interest, we'll just immediately show them that, hey, here's like a very important thing, a pretty big sized thing. Do you want to try to doing it? And then we love celebrating like the small wins. So highlight the impact of like small PRs and then tweet about it that, oh, we got this contribution and this is what it's going to unlock for the community. We also are building like community programs. For instance, we built like a All-Stars program. I've also seen Kafka has this community catalysts program, and then
Cool.
they kind of get featured and their PRs get featured, they get sent swag. So I think all of these things help in building that hunger and drive to contribute.
Awesome. Priyanka, was there anything you wanted to add? Those programs sound cool, so maybe you're aware of some of them.
Those are really awesome programs to encourage people to contribute. But I have found, for me, the motivational aspect has always been, I'm probably a bit of a purist there, is because like I've seen successful open source projects really being, I have overseen projects where they switched over from Oracle to MySQL just because MySQL was equally as scalable. MySQL is equally as robust. And I have seen major project migrations there. So I have seen successes of like open source projects from before, and being part of the community itself is such an honor, and building such solutions which become to be ubiquitous solutions that everyone wants to use is itself in such a nice thing to know that you contributed to. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it does fulfill the internal need to just give back to something greater, right?
Yeah.
Sudha, maybe you'd want to wrap up on your point of view.
Yeah, personally, like when I started on the open source journey, I found content in knowing that something that I contributed helped another person who's like completely away from me, not like directly related in like work, some like some person whom I wouldn't have met, right? I feel like drawing inspiration from that. I feel like building that motivation and celebrating every small milestone goes a great way in building that community and building that hunger for contributing.
Yeah. I think in CNCF, it's nice to just see people be welcoming to new contributors, right? The more, the merrier. That's the spirit of open source. That's the way we're going to make things better. And then also being able to pass the torch if you've been part of a community for a long time and you see people just ready and eager and motivated, and then you might be tired and just ready to maybe advise, and your legacy is going to live on. But really just kind of lifting those voices and contributions of newer community members. And then it keeps things sustainable. Like you mentioned, successful communities, they're labeled successful when you see them self-sustaining, right? So seeing that cycle, that healthy cycle, is a beautiful thing. Well, I think we're at time here. I just wanted to say thank you, everybody, for your time in this panel for the Open Source Data Summit. And yeah, I look forward to being able to collaborate on another level in person or just touch base to noodle on some ideas around community, but very much appreciated.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us here.